So here's a question. When you hear the 1%, what do you picture? Probably billionaires on private jets, sipping champagne while the rest of us pay rent, right? But here's the twist. Being in the 1% doesn't always mean being a billionaire. In fact, depending on where you live, you might only need six figures, or sometimes way less. So how rich do you really need to be to join the 1%, both in your country and around the world? Let's break it down. Section 1. What does 1% even mean? When people talk about the 1%, they're talking about the richest 1% of people in a country or globally based on income or wealth. Income equals how much money you make every year. Wealth equals how much money and assets you actually own. They're not the same thing. Someone might earn $200,000 a year but still have mountains of debt. Meanwhile, someone else might earn less but own five rental properties and have no mortgage. So when we talk about the 1%, we're usually referring to income because it's easier to track and compare. But here's something interesting. Wealth inequality is actually way bigger than income inequality, meaning the real power lies not with the people who earn the most each year, but with those who've kept the most over time. Section 2. The 1% in the US. All right, let's start close to home. In the United States, as of 2024, you'd need to make about $650,000 a year to be in the top 1%. Yep, 650 grand. That's the cutoff. Now, wealth is a whole other story. To be in the top 1% of net worth, you'd need around $11 million. So if you thought the 1% were just billionaires, think again. Plenty of doctors, lawyers, tech workers, and small business owners quietly sit in that group. They're not buying yachts, they're maxing out retirement accounts and quietly investing. And get this, the top 0.1%, the ultra rich, make about 3 million plus a year. That's where you start seeing private jets and hedge fund bonuses. It's not just about income either, it's about what your money can buy. In the US, the cost of housing, healthcare, and college tuition means even a high income can feel surprisingly average. Section 3. The 1% around the world. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The 1% threshold changes massively depending on where you live. Monaco, you'd need over $12 million just to make it into the 1%. Tiny country, giant wealth. Switzerland, around $5 million net worth. United States, about $11 million, as we said. China, roughly $1.1 million. Brazil, around $430,000. India, less than $100,000. See the pattern? What makes you middle class in one country might make you ultra rich in another. In fact, in some developing nations, earning just $50,000 a year could put you among the top 1% of earners nationwide. That's why wealth feels so relative. Rich is a mirror that changes depending on where you're standing. It's not just about numbers, it's about purchasing power and local cost. Section 4. The global 1% we're in now. Let's zoom out to the world stage. Here's the shocker. To be in the global 1% of income, you only need about $60,000 a year. That's right. If you make 60 grand annually, congratulations, you're already richer than 99% of the planet. It sounds wild, but it's true. Billions of people live in countries where the average income is just a few $1,000s or less. So someone making $70,000 in the US might feel middle class, but globally, they're near the top. In fact, if you earn $30,000 a year, you're still in roughly the global top 5%. That's the power of global inequality. It's not just the billionaires, it's ordinary people in rich countries too. And here's something else. The global 1% isn't evenly distributed. About half of them live in the US and Western Europe, even though that's only a fraction of the world's population. Section 5. Why it matters now. Does this mean everyone making $60,000 should feel like a billionaire? Not really. Cost of living changes everything. $60,000 in New York City might barely cover rent, groceries, and taxes. But in rural India or parts of Southeast Asia, that same amount gives you a completely different lifestyle. Car, home, savings, even staff. That's the paradox of global wealth. You can be in the global 1% and still feel broke in your own city. And that's why debates about the 1% are complicated. because it's not just about how much you earn, it's about what your money can do where you are. It also explains why inequality keeps growing. When global wealth piles up in a few countries and a few hands, even modest earners in wealthy nations are still part of the privileged few on a worldwide scale. Conclusion. So, how rich do you need to be to join the 1%? In the US, about $650,000 a year in income or $11 million in wealth. Globally, just $60,000 a year puts you in that elite group. The truth is, the 1% looks very different depending on where you're standing. In some places, it's yachts and mansions. In others, it's simply having a car and a savings account. So next time someone says the 1%, remember, it's not just billionaires. And depending on the math, you might even be part of it. And if you want me to break down how the 1% actually keep their money, the tax tricks, the offshore accounts, and the loopholes, that's a whole other video. Hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe so you don't miss it.